Centuries-old Native American recipes have disappeared from most kitchens, yet they once fed entire communities with incredible flavors and clever techniques. Most people have never even heard of them, let alone tasted them. What secrets are hidden in these forgotten dishes, and which of them could transform the way you cook today? One of the most famous examples is Three Sisters Stew. By combining corn, beans, and squash, Native Americans created a dish that was both delicious and nutritionally smart. Long before modern gardening tips, they discovered how these three plants could support each other like the perfect team. The corn grows tall and strong, perfect for the beans to climb up like a natural ladder. But here's where it gets clever. Those beans aren't just hitching a free ride. They're actually paying rent. The beans pull nitrogen from the air and feed it directly into the soil. It's like having roommates who actually improve the place instead of leaving dirty dishes everywhere. Meanwhile, the squash sprawls all over the ground with its huge leaves. Those leaves create shade that keeps the soil moist and blocks weeds from growing. Natural mulch and weed killer rolled into one. When harvest time came, these three crops together made a complete meal. Making the stew was simple, but smart. Cook the corn first because it took the longest. Then add the beans. Finally, the squash joined the party. The taste was rich and hearty. The corn added sweetness. The beans brought earthiness. The squash made everything creamy. Better than any canned soup that claims to be home-style but tastes like it was made in a chemistry lab. This wasn't just dinner. This was survival food that happened to taste amazing. One small plot could feed more people than 3 separate fields. Pure genius. Speaking of foods that could keep you alive, fry bread starts with a simple mix of flour, water, salt, and sometimes baking powder, but its story is complex. This recipe didn't begin as celebration food. Instead, it started during one of the darkest periods in Native American history. When tribes were forced onto reservations, the government gave them rations. But people adapt. They survive. They take what they have and make something good from it. Sometimes the best recipes come from the worst grocery shopping trips. The recipe couldn't be simpler. Mix flour with salt and baking powder. Add water until you get a soft dough. Heat oil in a pan. When it's hot enough that a drop of water sizzles, stretch the dough thin and drop it in. Like bread having its own inflatable moment. The dough bubbles and swells into crispy outside with soft, chewy inside. Sweet toppings turned it into dessert. Honey, powdered sugar, jam, or fresh berries. On the other hand, savory versions made it a full meal with beans and meat on top. However, the oil had to be just right. Too cool and the bread would be greasy. Too hot and it would burn. This wasn't just comfort food born from uncomfortable times. A reminder that people can create something beautiful even in difficult situations. Now let's talk about food that could travel to the moon and back. Pemmican might be the most practical food ever invented. This ultimate survival food combines dried meat, fat, and berries into something that could keep you alive for months without refrigeration or cooking. If energy bars had existed 1,000 years ago, they would have quit their day jobs after meeting pemmican. The recipe sounds simple. Take lean meat from bison, deer, or elk, slice thin and dry completely until it becomes jerky. Then pound that jerky into powder. Mix with rendered fat. Add dried berries. Press everything together into bars or balls. Simple doesn't mean easy, though. Getting proportions right took skill. Too much fat and it would spoil quickly. Too little and it would crumble. The meat had to be completely dry or the whole batch would go bad. Making pemmican was community work. Everyone had jobs. Some hunted animals. Others built drying racks. Women handled pounding and mixing since they knew exactly how the final product should feel. Like having a food assembly line that actually produced something worth eating. 1 pound of pemmican could keep a person fed for a whole day. Compare that to carrying multiple pounds of other foods that might spoil. The taste? Surprisingly good. Rich from the fat, slightly sweet from berries, with deep meaty flavor. The best pemmican could last for years if stored properly. Some stories tell of pemmican discovered in old caches decades later, still perfectly edible. Next up, let's explore something that turned summer abundance into winter treats. Dried berry cakes transformed wild berries into portable energy that could last through the coldest months. Summer was berry season, with strawberries, blackberries, and raspberries covering the landscape. Summer doesn't last forever, though. Smart people figured out how to capture those flavors for winter. The process started with gathering. Whole families spent days picking berries during peak season, like having your own outdoor grocery store, except the cashiers were usually bears. Drying happened several ways. Hot, sunny days meant spreading berries on bark mats. Direct sunlight would shrivel them into sweet, chewy pieces. Alternatively, smoke drying worked in humid weather. Build low fires with alder or cherry wood. Once dried, berries get pounded into coarse powder using stone mortars. This powder, mixed with rendered fat and ground nuts, created dense, energy-packed cakes. Bear fat was best because it stayed soft when cold. These weren't just trail snacks. They were concentrating on nutrition. Berries provided sugars and vitamins. Fat delivers calories for energy. Nuts added protein and minerals. Storage was critical. Keep the cakes dry and cool in bark containers sealed with pine pitch. Properly stored, they'd stay good for months. Much better than trying to pack fresh fruit for a week-long hiking trip where your strawberries turn into strawberry soup. While inland tribes perfected berry preservation, coastal peoples were mastering an entirely different technique. Smoked salmon from the Pacific Northwest represents sophisticated food preservation. Rivers ran thick with salmon during spawning season. Thousands of fish swimming upstream in runs that could feed entire villages. Salmon season was short, though. Catch and preserve them quickly, or watch all that protein swim away. First, catch the salmon. Tribes built elaborate traps across streams. Fish wheels, dip nets, and spears all played their part. Like the original fish market, except instead of ice displays, you had rushing rivers and determination. Preparation started immediately. Cut fish into fillets, leaving skin on one side. Remove all bones carefully. Salt the fish to draw out moisture and add flavor. The smoking setup required specific materials. Cedar was preferred because it burned clean with steady smoke. Temperature control was everything, though. Too hot and you'd cook instead of smoke. Too cool and fish would spoil. Time was measured in days, not hours. Good smoked salmon took 3 to 5 days. Someone had to tend fires constantly, adding wood to keep smoke going. The finished product was amazing. Rich, smoky flavor with concentrated fish taste. Chewy texture that satisfied hunger for hours. Better than any fancy restaurant salmon, and it came with a built-in expiration date of basically never. This wasn't just fish preservation. This was the foundation of entire civilizations. When winter storms made fishing impossible, smoked salmon kept everyone alive. Now let's move from the coast to the cornfields. Native-style cornbread was nothing like the fluffy, sweet stuff you get at restaurants today. This was bread that meant business, dense, substantial, and made from ingredients that could survive any climate. More like edible building blocks than bakery products. The corn was different too. Not sweet yellow kernels, but field corn. Hard kernels that dried and ground into coarse meals. Different varieties had different colors. White, yellow, red, blue, even nearly black corn. The basic recipe was incredibly simple. Cornmeal and water. That's it. Mix together until you get thick paste that would hold together when shaped. No salt, sugar, or baking powder. Cooking methods varied. Flat stones heated over fires worked like primitive griddles. Some people cooked directly in coals and ashes, wrapping dough in corn husks first. The texture was completely different from modern bread. Dense and heavy, with a slightly gritty feel. It didn't rise because corn lacks gluten. That density was good, though. A small piece would fill you up for hours, like eating concentrated sustenance instead of fluffy air pockets pretending to be food. The flavor was pure corn, sweet and earthy, with subtle differences depending on variety. This bread connected people to the land directly. Speaking of sweet treats that required perfect timing, maple sugar candy represents nature's own confectionery, created during a brief spring window when conditions aligned perfectly. When days got warm but nights stayed cold, maple trees started running sap, clear, slightly sweet liquid that could become something incredible. Timing was everything. Too early and sap would be thin and barely sweet. Too late and it would taste bitter. Perfect conditions lasted maybe 4 to 6 weeks, like having a candy factory that only operates when Mother Nature feels generous. Finding good maple trees took experience. Sugar maples were best with highest sugar content. Tapping required careful technique. Drill holes just deep enough to reach inner wood. Insert hollow reeds or wooden spouts to direct sap into containers. Processing was where real work began. boiling off water to concentrate sugars. This required constant attention and fuel for fires. It took about 40 gallons of sap to make 1 gallon of syrup. Talk about the ultimate patience test with the sweetest possible reward. Testing for doneness was part art, part science. Drop boiling syrup into cold water. If it forms soft ball, ready for syrup. Keep boiling for hard crack stage, perfect for solid candy. The flavor was unlike anything else. Pure maple sweetness with complex undertones that varied depending on trees and weather. This wasn't just candy making, it was capturing the essence of the forest. Enter pokeweed, or as folks called it back then, poke salad. This stuff grew everywhere in the eastern woodlands, shooting up tall purple stems that screamed, "Eat me," to desperate families. But here's where it gets interesting and dangerous. Young pokeweed shoots were absolutely loaded with vitamins A and C, plus trace minerals that winter-weary bodies craved. Think of it as nature's multivitamin, but with a deadly catch. The mature plant? Pure poison. Roots, berries, older leaves, all toxic enough to put you in the ground. So how did people not die left and right? Cultural knowledge passed down like family recipes. Grandmothers taught daughters exactly which shoots to pick, when to pick them, and most importantly, how to cook them properly. You had to boil those young greens not once, but twice, dumping the water each time to leach out the toxins. The whole ritual became a rite of spring. Families would venture into the woods together, hunting for those tender purple shoots poking through the forest floor. Kids learned to spot the safe ones, while adults shared stories about cousin Jimmy who got careless with poke and spent 3 days wishing he hadn't. This wasn't just about getting fed, it was about survival knowledge encoded in tradition. Makes you wonder what other secrets were hiding in those family recipes, doesn't it? Speaking of hidden treasures, wait until you hear about what early Americans discovered growing wild in their sunny meadows. Wild sunflowers used to tower over meadows like nature's own skyscrapers, but here's the kicker. Nobody was eating the seeds back then. Nope. The real treasure was hiding in plain sight, those thick green stems and plump flower buds. Before anyone figured out how to breed sunflowers for those massive seed heads we know today, Native Americans were munching on something completely different. They'd harvest the tender shoots in spring and early summer, plus grab those unopened flower buds right before they bloomed. The taste? Well, imagine crossing asparagus with artichoke hearts. Sounds fancy, right? These sunflower chokes had this sweet, nutty flavor that made them worth the effort. And trust me, anything that tastes like artichoke without the Mediterranean price tag is a win. The preparation was dead simple too. Roast them over coals or steam them in earth ovens. No complicated processing, no toxic compounds to worry about, just good old-fashioned cooking. The stems stayed tender if you caught them young enough, and those flower buds were like little green treasures packed with vitamins. But here's where things get interesting. These wild varieties thrived everywhere. Sunny meadows, disturbed soil, even poor ground where other crops threw in the towel. Zero maintenance required. They basically grew themselves. Then agriculture got smarter. Plant breeders started focusing on bigger seeds, better oil content, massive flower heads. Makes sense for commercial farming, sure, but we completely forgot about eating the rest of the plant. Now, most gardeners just stare at their sunflower stalks and wonder what to do with all that green bulk. Meanwhile, there's another forgotten crop that's been quietly making a comeback in health food circles. Want to know what fueled ancient warriors and marathon runners? Amaranth. This tiny grain packs more protein than most cereals and enough calcium to make your bones sing. The Aztecs called it never-fading flour. And honestly, they weren't exaggerating. Picture a plant that laughs in the face of drought. While corn withers and wheat throws in the towel, amaranth keeps cranking out those nutty little seeds like it's having the time of its life. Poor soil? No problem. Blazing sun? Bring it on. This stuff grows where other crops go to die. But here's the kicker. You can eat the whole darn plant. Young leaves taste like spinach's cooler cousin, loaded with iron that'll put Popeye to shame. The seeds, pure gold. Grind them into flour, pop them like tiny popcorn, or toss them in soups for that satisfying crunch. Native Americans knew what they had. They'd harvest those gorgeous red and gold seed heads in late summer, storing enough protein-packed grains to last through winter. Smart move, considering amaranth contains all 9 essential amino acids. Makes sense, right? Then came the Great Grain Takeover. Wheat muscled its way onto every dinner plate, and amaranth got shoved into the health food store curiosity corner. What a shame. We traded a drought-resistant superfood for crops that need babying. The funny thing? Now fancy restaurants charge $15 for amaranth bowls, calling them ancient grains. Well, at least someone figured out we threw away something pretty spectacular. Speaking of spectacular plants that got the cold shoulder, there's this grass that produces grains so nutrient-dense, entire civilizations built their lives around it. Roasted acorn meals turned what many consider inedible nuts into nutritious flour that could feed families through hard times. Acorns were abundant, free, and available every fall. They required special processing, though, to remove bitter compounds. Collection timing mattered. Fresh fallen acorns were best. Look for nuts that felt heavy and didn't rattle when shaken, like the world's most tedious treasure hunt, except the treasure actually kept you alive. Processing bitter tannins was the crucial step. These compounds made raw acorns taste terrible and could cause stomach problems. They could be removed by leaching with water repeatedly until water ran clear instead of brown. Some people dug special leaching pits in sandy soil near streams. Line the pit with stones, add ground acorns, and let clean water flow through continuously. Hot water worked faster, but required more fuel. Final grinding produced flour suitable for cooking. Roasting was optional, but added flavor. Uses were numerous. Mix with water for porridge. Combine with other flours for bread. Add to stews as thickener. This was turning garbage into groceries. Better than any modern superfood, and it came with free tree service delivery every fall. Let's move from nuts to seeds. Sunflower seed cakes transformed ordinary garden plants into concentrated energy bars that could fuel long journeys. Sunflowers weren't just pretty flowers. They were serious food producers providing protein, healthy fats, and portable nutrition. Growing sunflowers required minimal care but produced maximum results. Plant seeds in spring, give them space, water during dry spells. The plants would grow huge and produce massive flower heads packed with seeds, like having your own personal oil factory that also doubled as garden decoration. Processing started with removing seeds from dried flower heads. Roasting brought out best flavors and made seeds easier to process. Heat clean stones over fire, spread seeds on stones, stir frequently until golden brown. Grinding required strong tools. Stone mortars worked best. Grind roasted seeds into coarse meal. Add fat gradually while mixing by hand. Bare fat was preferred for consistency and flavor. These weren't just snacks, these were portable powerhouses, high in protein, packed with healthy fats, rich in vitamins and minerals. One small cake could keep you going for hours. This was turning weeds into wealth. Sunflowers grew easily and required minimal care, but produced food valuable enough to trade. Better investment returns than most modern stocks, and you could actually eat the dividends. Now, let's look at wild game preparation. Venison stew combined wild game with foraged plants to create meals that could feed large groups. When hunters brought home deer, nothing was wasted. Every part had a purpose, and stew made the tougher cuts tender and delicious. Preparation started with proper butchering. Cut carcass into manageable pieces. Separate different cuts according to best uses. Stew meat came from tougher portions that benefited from long, slow cooking. Starting the stew meant building flavors gradually. Brown meat pieces first if possible. This added color and rich taste. Like the foundation of a house, except this foundation was made of deliciousness. Wild vegetables made stew more nutritious and filling. Wild onions added flavor. Root vegetables provided carbohydrates. Whatever was available and in season got added to the pot. Cooking time was measured in hours, not minutes. Tough venison needed long, slow cooking to become tender. This wasn't just dinner. This was community building in a bowl. Large pots could feed many people from a single animal, better than any potluck dinner because everyone knew exactly where the main ingredient came from. Now, let's move to roasting for special occasions. Buffalo rib roast represented the ultimate feast food, reserved for special occasions when entire communities celebrated together. When hunters successfully brought down a buffalo, it meant food for everyone and celebrations lasting days. Buffalo hunting required entire communities working together. These massive animals could weigh over a ton and were unpredictable and powerful, like trying to catch a moving truck with attitude problems. The rib section was considered the choicest part. Large, meaty ribs with plenty of fat marbling. Perfect for roasting because fat keeps meat moist during long cooking. Roasting began with searing the outside. This created a flavorful crust and helped seal in juices. Turn regularly to sear all sides evenly, then move to moderate heat for slow cooking. Fat and marrow were considered the most valuable parts. Rich fat provided essential calories and flavors. Bone marrow was a delicacy often reserved for elders and honored guests. This was more than cooking meat. This was celebrating abundance and community success. Buffalo roasts marked successful hunts, important ceremonies, and times when the whole tribe could feast together. This represented ultimate sustainable eating, like having a shopping mall that walked around on four legs and provided everything you needed. Let's move from prairie to lake shores. Wild rice pilaf showcases how one of North America's most unique grains sustained entire communities through harsh winters. Wild rice wasn't actually rice at all, but grass seed that grew in shallow lakes and marshes. Harvesting was an art form requiring perfect timing. Two people worked together in canoes. One pulled through rice beds while the other used wooden sticks to knock ripe seeds loose, like having a floating combine harvester powered by human muscle and perfect coordination. Processing involved multiple steps. First, dry the rice in sun or over low fires. Then parch it in shallow containers over moderate fires, stirring constantly. This loosened hulls and added nutty flavor. Hulling removed tough outer covering. This was done by treading on rice in hide-lined pits or pounding with wooden tools. Winnowing separated good rice from chaff using large baskets. Cooking required patience because wild rice took much longer than regular rice. Bring water to boil, add cleaned rice slowly while stirring. Simmer for hours until tender but still textured. This wasn't just a side dish. This was the foundation of the northern diet. Wild rice provided carbohydrates, protein, and essential nutrients that kept people healthy through long winters. This was sustainable harvesting at its finest. Better environmental stewardship than most modern farming, and it came with built-in crop insurance. Now let's look at coastal cuisine. Corn and fish chowder brought together land and water bounty in a dish that could feed large groups while providing complete nutrition. Fresh fish provided protein and healthy fats. Corn contributed carbohydrates and helped thicken the chowder naturally. Fish selection depended on availability. Lake fish like walleye or bass worked perfectly. Ocean fish such as cod or salmon were equally good. Fresh was preferred, but smoked or dried fish could work when needed. Basic preparation began with cleaning and filleting fish. Remove all bones carefully, cut into bite-sized pieces, like making the most of every part of your catch, because throwing away fish parts was basically throwing away flavor. Adding corn came next. Stir cornmeal into simmering liquid gradually to prevent lumps. The corn needed time to cook and release its starches, which naturally thickened the chowder. The timing was important. Add fish near the end of cooking since it cooked quickly. Overcooking made fish tough and rubbery. This was fusion cuisine before fusion was trendy, like the original surf and turf, except it actually made sense nutritionally. Let's move to fresh salads. Wild green salad showcased nature's pharmacy in edible form, combining various wild plants that provided vitamins, minerals, and medicinal compounds. This wasn't just random weeds thrown together, but carefully selected plants that complemented each other nutritionally. Plant selection required extensive knowledge passed down through generations. Dandelion greens provided vitamins A and C plus iron. Meanwhile, purslane offered omega-3 fatty acids. Lamb's quarters delivered protein and calcium, like having a vitamin store that grew wild everywhere and never charged membership fees. Harvesting timing was crucial for both safety and flavor. Young leaves were more tender and less bitter than mature ones. Spring greens were often preferred before plants became tough in summer heat. Preparation was minimal but important. Wash greens thoroughly to remove dirt and insects. Some bitter greens could be improved by brief wilting over fire. This was the original superfood salad, high in vitamins A, C, and K, plus numerous minerals and medicinal compounds. Better than any expensive health food trend, and it came with free pest control for your garden. This represented eating as medicine. Many of these plants had specific medicinal properties beyond basic nutrition. Now let's look at root vegetables. Roasted root vegetables turned underground treasures into hearty meals that could sustain people through harsh winters. Turnips, wild carrots, parsnips, and native potatoes could be roasted in ashes to bring out their natural sweetness. Root selection required knowledge of which plants were safe and nutritious. Wild turnips provided carbohydrates and vitamins. Meanwhile, native potatoes offered sustained energy, like having a root cellar that stored itself underground and never needed electricity. Harvesting happened in fall when roots had stored maximum energy for winter. Dig carefully to avoid damaging the roots. Clean off excess dirt, but leave skin on for protection during cooking. Ash roasting was the preferred cooking method. Bury whole roots in hot ashes from hardwood fires. The ashes provided even gentle heat that cooked thoroughly without burning. Cooking time varied depending on size and type of root. Small roots might be done in an hour. Large ones could take several hours. This was comfort food that actually comforted me. Sweet, hearty, and filling. Better than any modern comfort food because it actually made you feel better instead of guilty. Finally, let's end with a true staple. Hominy stew represents the culmination of corn processing knowledge, where corn treated with lye or wood ash was transformed into a nutritious base for hearty meals that could feed large groups during important gatherings. The process started with dried corn kernels that were treated with lye made from wood ash. This removed the tough outer hulls and made certain nutrients more available to the body, like corn that went to finishing school and came back more refined and nutritious. Making lye required burning specific hardwoods until they became ash. Mix the ash with water and let it settle. The clear liquid on top contained the lye needed for processing corn. This had to be done carefully since lye was caustic. Treating the corn involved soaking it in lye solution until the hulls loosened and could be rubbed off. Then rinse the corn thoroughly to remove all traces of lye. The stew combined hominy with whatever protein and vegetables were available. Meat made it more substantial. Meanwhile, beans added protein and fiber. Wild vegetables provided vitamins and minerals. This wasn't just dinner, this was celebration food. Hominy stew was often prepared for feasts, ceremonies, and times when the whole community came together. The nutritional transformation was remarkable. Treating corn with lye made niacin bioavailable, preventing pellagra and other nutritional deficiencies, like having a chemistry lab that doubled as a kitchen and actually improved your health. This represents the perfect ending to our journey. From simple Three Sisters stew to complex hominy preparation, these 20 recipes show how Native Americans created sophisticated cuisine using only what nature provided.